Okay, so time to make a Windows XP and Server 2003 installation guide video for modern hardware in 2020. So we will be using the Z490 Dark or Dark Kingpin from EVGA, an Intel 10900K Comet Lake CPU with 10 cores, 2 sticks of Samsung BDI based DDR4 memory from Galax or KFA2 with the newer PCP type. So this whole guide video will be very similar to the one I already made with the Z390 Dark in early 2019. So very similar in many ways. But this time we can actually have all of the USB ports working. So this time it will be a lot more, a lot better than before, because before we only had that one USB 3.1 type A port working at the rear I/O, which was controlled by an AHCI storage controller. Now we will have all of the USB ports working, so all of the Intel ones. So will be much better. Now this will be, I think this will be more flexible if you have a Z490 motherboard like the Dark that has third-party AHCI based controller, storage controller. So you can get XP to work even with Intel based ports, but I think it's if you have a third-party one, it gives you more flexibility. But I will add both of the AHCI drivers in the description box down below, so you can try both. But if your motherboard has AHCI controller, I would suggest you try with that one first. So we will just place the DVD drive plus the SSD or the hard drive into these AHCI based SATA ports over here. They are separated from the Intel ones by these white lines over here. So the bottom 6 are Intel, top 2 are AHCI, which I already showed you in the Z490 Dark unboxing and overview video. So but for Windows XP or Server 2003 use, I would recommend you use PS2, well, at least for the installation process. It will be much easier, trust me. So I have that PS2 splitter cable over there, which splits the PS2 combo port of the rear I/O into individual mouse and keyboard connection, so we can have much better installation experience with that. So we will just prepare the Windows XP installation media, get all the drivers there, and then we will flash a BIOS from a USB stick that allows us to install Windows XP. So I recommend you change the BIOS switch position to another spot, so you can flash an XP BIOS to that position and have your daily BIOS in the first position, because well, the XP BIOS is a little bit different, and for overclocking purposes we often use those special BIOSes that don't have all of the microcodes of the retail BIOS in the BIOS, because removing the microcodes improves performance, but it also gives some compatibility and overall use issues, so just bear that in mind. So definitely flash the XP BIOS to another BIOS switch position and have your daily in the other one. But yeah, so let's get going. So let's get to the desktop view now, and I will show you how to prepare the installation media, and then we will flash the BIOS, and then we will get on and actually install the Windows XP with this Z490 motherboard. Okay, so here we are on the desktop. So now we have to prepare the installation media itself in order to install on the Z490 motherboard and to have all the important stuff working. Like we have to install the AHCI drivers so that we can actually install the whole operating system, and then we want to have the USB drivers ready for the installation. So because we want to have all of the USB ports working when we actually get on to the Windows XP desktop. So right now in this folder I have the installation ISO file opened up or extracted. So if your Windows XP installation media is in an ISO file, you have to extract it into an empty folder so that we can actually access the files and make changes to it. or to them. So then you need to have the AHCI drivers ready, so for the AHCI ports or the Intel ones. But if your motherboard has a third-party AHCI storage controller, I recommend you have these ones and you try these first. Then we need the Intel Z490 USB drivers for Windows XP. Yes, they are unofficial ones, but this guide also works for Windows 7 as well. So installing Windows 7 is done by the same way, so it's very easy actually. Then we need this usbd.sys file, because most of the time this doesn't exist in its correct place on its own when installing on these new operating systems. I mean, when installing on these new motherboards and platforms. But at least for me, there is always a bug or a crash during the installation process if this is placed in its correct place. So we have to put this at the root of the installation disk, and we could also place the USB drivers just in case as well. So if there's an issue and they are not being installed correctly, we can still install them again within the operating system. So now let's open up NLite. Then we need to browse and find or locate the installation media or the files which it already has done by itself. So Z490 XP1. So this is the same operating system media I used on the Windows XP installation video for the Z490 motherboards. So I will hit next. So it loads all the information. We hit drivers and bootable ISO. Then we will hit next. We will click insert multiple driver folder once again. We will go to the ASM106X. The AHCI controller of this board is 1061, so that's why the X. And we will hit that driver subfolder over there and hit OK. We have 4 different options. We will click all and OK. And text mode, and as we are installing Windows XP 32-bit, in this example we will click 32-bit. But if you want to install Windows XP 64-bit edition, you will just hit 64-bit. As far as I know, installing 64-bit Windows XP is easier if you use third-party SATA controller, as far as what I was reading on the forums. So that's why it's better to have a third-party storage controller present on the motherboards, because it gives you a lot more flexibility than being just restricted to Intel stuff. But yeah, 32-bit OK, and same thing, 32-bit OK. And we will hit insert multiple driver folder once again. And now we will find the USB and x86. Why it doesn't find it? Yeah, just click that one from the root. I will check. Yeah, there's no. So just take the. It will read as AMD driver, but just take the. Just select the base folder. So the root folder. Don't have to separate 64-bit and 32-bit. So just select that and OK, and we will hit next. We will let this to process this. Then we will hit next for one time. We have labeled the Z490 XP already over there. And then we will not go to the i386 folder this time as in my Z490 guide video, and we will just we will Ctrl C the usbd.sys and we will paste it to the root of this installation disk. And we will do the same thing just in case to the Z490 dark. I mean the Z490 USB XP driver. And we will just place it over there just in case. Because when I had the usbd.sys in the i386, even when named correctly as all of these other files, I always got USB hub.sys error on the during the installation process, and it went away when I took off or I removed the USB-d.sys from that folder. So just in case, it's much more idiot-proof by doing it this way. Now we will hit make ISO desktop Z490 XP, and now it will create the ISO file. We will hit next and finish. Now we will, I like to use image burn, but you can use whatever burning software you wish, and just make sure you have an empty DVD over there. You can install the operating system from a USB stick as well if you don't have an optical drive, but it's harder to do that way. You need to use a program called FiraDisk, because you need to apply the USB drivers at the very beginning of the installation process to the RAM of the system, and it will load the drivers for the installation process. That's why I always install these old operating systems from a DVD, because it's just much more easier. It doesn't cost that much to have an optical drive at hand for these purposes. Whenever I install Windows 7 or any operating system that is older than Windows 8, I tend to use DVDs. So write image file to disk, verify is ticked, but it doesn't have to be, and we will just select Z490 XP.ISO and we will burn. It shouldn't harm to have the USB driver just in case at the root of the installation media, because it doesn't always work as it should, and you might find that the USB ports aren't working correctly when we land on the desktop, so that is just in case. So I will let this to burn, and once it has completed, I will get back to you in the BIOS, because we need to flash the XP BIOS to the motherboard in order to run Windows XP successfully. So I will just let this to finish, and we will then do the next steps in the BIOS. Okay, so the next step we have to do is that we need to get an XP BIOS flashed to the motherboard. So as I already said at the beginning, you should flash the XP BIOS to the second BIOS position on your motherboard. And I would assume your motherboard has at least two BIOSes if you have some high-end Z490 motherboard. So we, at least on the Z490 Dark and Dark Kingpin, we go to the extras and down, and we go to the BIOS update feature inside the BIOS. And here we have two XP BIOSes. We have the 28th of August T02 and T00 no U code. The difference between these two is that this upper one is like a normal retail BIOS with XP support. So it has all of the native microcodes of the Comet Lake CPUs. The no U code, the no U code version has most of those microcodes removed. So if you remember when the Spectra Meltdown patches were introduced to Intel CPUs, they actually lowered performance. So for like benchmarking purposes and overclocking, we want to have those microcodes disabled, because when they are gone, we have better performance, especially in like old tests and even relatively new tests. But like old tests like SuperPi, there the difference is huge. And newer tests like Cinebench, I think Geekbench 3, although in Geekbench 3 the difference wasn't that big, and many other tests, the performance is just better when most of those microcodes have been removed. But if you flash the no U code version for now, you cannot install the Windows XP from a DVD. It will get stuck at that screen when it would ask you to press any key to load the information from a DVD or from the disk. So you have to install the operating system with a BIOS that has all of the microcodes still inside the BIOS, so just saying. So now I would just flash this one over here, and then you could have XP plus no U code BIOS in the third position if you are using Z490 Dark or Dark Kingpin, so just saying. So get an XP BIOS that has all of the microcodes still enabled. And this version is 28th of August 2020. Clock time is 14:27:05. I have already flashed this BIOS, so I will just show you. So I'll hit no or I will escape and I will press F1. And you can see in the build date 28th of August 2020, 14:27:05. So this is the same version which I just showed you. So to install Windows XP, we go to the boot tab. We will change boot mode select to legacy and boot option 1 to CD/DVD, and we will press F10. The DVD is already inside the optical drive which we created. So this is the spot where it would stuck with the no microcode BIOS. So it would just blink that dash mark over there, and it wouldn't show you that text to press any key to load the information from a disk. And when it goes to the USB part, it always failed. It always showed that USB hub.sys error if the usbd.sys file was inside the i386 folder. So that's why we want to have those at the root of the installation DVD for now. So in that spot. So we just passed that. Of course, if you install from a USB stick, it's different. In this part, you have to press F6. At the beginning of this part, you have to press F6 to load the Fura disk with the USB driver in order to install the whole thing. That's why it's just so much easier this way. This is actually very straightforward when you install from a DVD. Installing Windows 7 is completely identical to this process at the moment. So now we will see all the things. So we have one partition. I will delete it by pressing D. So we just have one bank of unpartitioned space. We will just hit enter to install. I recommend you do full format. Full format, but for this, just for demonstration purposes now, I will do only a quick format to just make this whole thing faster. But I generally like to do a full format because it actually removes stuff. So it will just copy these files, and once it has copied all of them, it will reboot, and then we can actually see the installation screen. And now we are booting Windows XP. Quite funny to see that screen in 2020 with so new hardware. This is not the same as the original Windows XP installation screen. This is more like the classic look, because this operating system ISO file has been stripped down a lot. But it doesn't matter, the end result will be the same. So we have Z390, I will change it to Z490. Now it will just copy the remaining files and finish the installation, and the next thing we will see is the actual desktop. I will let it finish, and then we will just meet on the desktop. Okay, so now we are on the desktop with Z490 Motherboard and 1000K. We go to settings, change the resolution to max. We hit advanced button over here. Go to troubleshoot. I will disable hardware acceleration so that it doesn't lag. So now we can go to we can prove it together that the usbd.sys doesn't exist in its spot by default when we install with modern hardware like this. So we go to Windows, System 32, and drivers subfolder. So when we scroll down, we cannot find. But this, I'm not sure if this is the correct one. So the one that we have been using is newer. So just saying, that's why it's better to have the USB file, I mean the USBD file at the root of the installation disk. I will try to put a USB stick into one of the USB ports now. And not working. Or wait. It tries to load. Yeah, it does work, but it doesn't hurt if you have. It doesn't hurt at all if you have the USB-D file plus the actual drivers at the root of the installation DVD, just in case. So let's install CPU Z so that we can confirm this. So we install CPU Z 1.92. Okay, so now we can see 10900K, Comet Lake, 10 cores, 20 threads, mainboard, EVGA Z490 Dark Kingpin, the BIOS I mentioned, memory 16 gigabytes of DDR4 but at the JDEC defaults. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. It was very hard for me to do this. For starters, I really tried a lot, but now it's much better than before because now we have all of the USB ports working. Even the front panel, like Kate's front panel, USB ports should work. So you have pretty much the same control as in a new operating system. Of course, I'm not fully sure if you can access internet. If the LAN driver works, but I think it should. I have just not tried it myself. So you could even almost build like a daily Windows XP rig around this motherboard, which is kind of cool. So let's check system. Yeah. Just 2.44 gigabytes of RAM because this is a 32-bit OS, but doesn't matter. So yeah, so that's how you install Windows XP or Server 2003 in 2020 with a Z490 based motherboard and the 10900K Comet Lake CPU from Intel the easy way. So from a DVD. You can of course install from a USB stick if you wish. I will link down the original guide on how to install Windows XP using Theradisk on modern platforms since the original Skylake. So if you want to go that way, but really, if you really mess a lot with old operating systems on new hardware, I would recommend you have some spare optical drive at hand because it's just so much easier. But yeah, so try this if you want to. For overclocking purposes, there's still reason to use Windows XP, but for daily use, I don't see that much reason to run an operating system old like this with new hardware like the 10900K and Z490 Dark. But you can if you really want to. So give a thumbs up if you like to see this guide and subscribe to my channel. And thanks for watching one of my videos once again. And I will see you on the next one.